The ring was already out of the box when the elevator doors opened, and Choi Yejin's entire carefully built life went silent at the sound of a laugh he hadn't heard in 6 years. 200 guests turned to look. The woman who owned that laugh wasn't supposed to exist in this room, in this life, on this night of all nights. And standing just behind her, half hidden in the doorway, were two children he had never seen before in his life. If stories like this hit you somewhere real, hit like, subscribe, and settle in, because this one is about to break your heart before it puts it back together. The proposal had taken 3 weeks of planning. Ivory flowers, a private floor, a photographer paid to capture the exact second Yoon Ariam said yes. Choi Yejin had rehearsed the moment in his head 100 times. None of those rehearsals included the private elevator opening on the wrong floor, or a woman named Ivy Calloway stepping out of it with her son and daughter, completely unaware she just walked into the middle of someone else's life. She froze first. He froze a half-second after, the ring box tilting in his palm as the room held its breath around him. Somewhere near the back, a guest's phone was already lifting to record without anyone noticing yet. Yoon Ariam, still seated at the small table prepared for the moment, watched the entire scene unfold with an expression that wasn't jealousy at all, more like quiet, exhausted relief, the look of someone who'd been waiting for an excuse all along. Ivy. She looked at the flowers, the guests, the ring still catching the light. Something in her face didn't break so much as confirm an old wound she'd never quite let close. "You're getting married," she said quietly. "Ivy, let me." "It's fine," she said, already gathering her children. "It's fine, Yejin. We were never supposed to be standing here." She was gone before he could find his footing, the elevator doors closing on a proposal that would now never happen. It wasn't until he was sitting alone on the carpet meant for an entirely different kind of moment that it hit him. The half-second before the doors closed, the boy's face turned just slightly toward him. His own eyes. His exact eyes, in a face he had never seen before in his life. He hadn't even registered it as it happened. He registered it now, and couldn't breathe properly for reasons that had nothing to do with the broken engagement at all. That night, in a small apartment across the city, 8-year-old Sora curled up next to her mother on the couch and asked the question Ivy had spent years dreading. "Mommy, is that man our dad?" Ivy's hand stilled in her daughter's hair. "Why would you ask that?" "Because you cry sometimes," Sora said simply, "when you look at his picture. Mateo's seen it too." Ivy kissed the top of her head and said only, "Go to sleep, baby," and sat awake long after both children had drifted off, staring at a photograph she'd never managed to throw away. He found her 2 days later at the small restaurant where she helped a friend with the books, the one place he remembered her loving enough to still be drawn to. He came alone, no driver, waiting outside for the first time in over a decade, holding a slightly crushed bouquet and a paper bag with 2 cheap toys inside. "You shouldn't be here," Ivy said, not moving from behind the counter. "I know." He set the bouquet down like an offering he wasn't sure she'd accept. "I'm not asking you to take me back. I need one answer and then I'll go if you want me to." She crossed her arms. "Ask it. Why did you leave?" His voice cracked on the last word. 6 years, Ivy. I tore this city apart looking for you. I need to hear it from you. You think I left?" Her laugh had no warmth in it at all. "You really believe I just walked away from you?" "That's what I was told." "By who?" His jaw tightened. "My mother." "Of course it was." Ivy pressed both palms flat against the counter, like she needed something solid to hold on to. "She came to me 4 months after I found out I was pregnant. Told me I was a liability the family image couldn't survive. Said if I didn't disappear quietly, she'd have my visa sponsorship pulled within the week and make sure every immigration officer in this city believed I'd been using you for money the whole time. I had no family here, Yejin. No lawyer. No one who would have taken my word over the choice. She forged the papers," he said slowly, like the shape of it was only now becoming real. "She forged everything. My exit, my silence, your version of the story. I tried reaching you for months after, every letter, every call gone before it ever touched your hands." Her voice finally broke. "I didn't leave you, I was erased, and I had 2 children to keep alive while I figured out how to live with that." He said nothing for a long moment. When he finally spoke, it wasn't an excuse. I believed her, he said quietly, because the alternative was unbearable. I'm sorry. I know that doesn't undo anything. No, Ivy said, it doesn't. But she didn't ask him to leave either. 3 days later, Yejin sat across from Yoon Ariam in her family's parlor and ended it himself plainly without hiding behind a press release. There are 2 children, he told her. Mine, I only just found out. Ariam was quiet for a long moment. Do you love her still after everything? I never stopped, Yejin admitted. I didn't let myself look at it directly until I saw her face in that elevator. Then you'd have made a poor husband to me, Ariam said, not unkindly. I think some part of me always knew something in you was already spoken for. I hope you're happier than you've let yourself be in years. She left with more grace than he felt he deserved, and by the next morning, the broken engagement was the only thing anyone in the city was talking about. The fallout was immediate. Within a day, his family's lawyers were quietly drafting a custody filing, framing Ivy as an unfit, unknown variable in the Choi family line. Mrs. Beek warned her before Yejin even finished explaining it. They'll move fast, Mrs. Beek said, faster than you'd expect. They'll paint you as unstable, as opportunistic, anything that sells to a judge. Let them try. Ivy's voice didn't shake. I spent 6 years being erased by paperwork I never saw coming. I see this one coming from a mile away. You don't have to do this alone, Mrs. Beek said gently. I've done everything alone for 6 years, Ivy said. I'm not about to stop now just because he's back. She'd already retained her own attorney the morning the story broke, refusing to be caught flat-footed twice in one lifetime. It was Mateo, not Ivy, who asked for the meeting. I want to talk to him, he told his mother. Just me and Sara, no grown-up stuff. They met in a quiet cafe, Mrs. Beek present as the only adult both sides trusted. Mateo crossed his arms, sounding more like a small adult than a child. Why did you let her go? I didn't know the truth until it was too late, Yejin said. My mother made sure of that. That's not an excuse, it's just what happened. Grown-ups always say that, Mateo said. It's not an excuse. Then they don't do anything different. Yejin leaned forward slightly, meeting the boy's eyes instead of brushing past the challenge. Then watch what I do instead of what I say. That's fair, isn't it? Mateo considered this with the seriousness of someone twice his age. Sara, who'd been quiet until now, finally spoke. Did you ever think about us, before you knew we were real? No, Yejin admitted. And that's the part I'm sorry for the most, not that I missed you, that I didn't even know enough to miss you. Sara studied him for a long moment. If we let you come back and you leave again, what happens? Then you tell me and I go, Yejin said. No fighting, no conditions. You two decide, not me. They had a whispered, deadly serious negotiation in the corner of the booth, heads pressed together, that ended with Mateo announcing, "Okay, trial period, don't mess it up." I won't, Yejin said. You don't get to promise that yet, Mateo said. You have to earn it first. Yejin almost laughed, startled by how much the boy sounded like his mother. Fair enough. It was Mrs. Beek who delivered the next blow days later. There's something you should know, she said. Ivy came to the estate once, years ago, with the twins. She wanted to introduce them to you. Yejin went still. What happened? Your mother turned her away at the gate, told security to say no one by that name had ever come. How long ago? 3 years, maybe more, Mrs. Beek said quietly. I should have told you sooner, I'm sorry. I was afraid of her too, for longer than I'd like to admit. Yejin said nothing for a long time, doing the arithmetic in his head, how close they'd come, how many ordinary days could have looked completely different. 6 years of grief rearranged itself into something closer to rage, not at the distance between them anymore, but at how unnecessary so much of it had been. Before any of it could boil over completely, Yejin made a quiet decision no one had asked him to make. He leased a place in the neighborhood next to theirs. No announcement, no press, just a man choosing to be close enough to actually show up instead of visiting on a schedule. It was that proximity that put him minutes away instead of across the city when the storm hit. Power failed across the block in the middle of the night, and in the confusion, Sara slipped out of the house unnoticed. By the time anyone realized she was gone, the streets were already flooding. Yejin tore through her room first, searching for any clue, and his hand caught a shoebox shoved under her bed. Inside, a stack of crayon drawings, dozens of them, every one labeled in careful, deliberate handwriting to Dad. Some dated back over a year. He hadn't been in her life at all then. She'd been drawing for him anyway, folding each one in half like a letter she never had an address to send. He sat on the floor with the box in his lap for one unbearable second, the storm rattling the windows before forcing himself back up. There wasn't time to feel any of it yet. He had to find her first. He found her 12 minutes later, soaked and shaking near a flooded intersection, clutching a street lamp to keep from being swept off her feet. He didn't think. He ran straight into the water and pulled her into his arms. "You're okay," he kept saying into her wet hair. "You're okay, I've got you." She pressed her face into his shoulder, shaking. "Dad," it was the first time she'd ever said it. "I thought you'd disappear again," she whispered. "Everyone kept saying you would." "I'm not going anywhere," he said. "Not ever again." "Promise?" she asked, small and uncertain against his chest. "I promise," he said, and meant it more than he'd meant anything in years. Ivy met them halfway home, soaked through within seconds of seeing her daughter's face, pulling them both into her arms without a word. For one long moment, the three of them just stood there in the rain, none of them willing to be the first to let go. The custody filing collapsed 2 weeks later, and the reason surprised everyone. It hadn't been Director Choi pushing it at all. It had been a cousin angling for more control over the company, using the scandal as leverage, while Director Choi quietly buried it behind the scenes without telling a soul, including her own son. Confronted directly, she didn't deny any of it. "I tore your family apart once," she said. "I wasn't going to let someone else finish the job for sport." "You could have told me," Yejin said, voice raw. "I would have helped you fight it together." "Telling you would have meant explaining the first thing I did," she said. "I wasn't ready for that conversation. I'm still not certain I am." "You don't get to protect us in secret and call it enough," he said. "Not after everything." "I'm not calling it enough," Director Choi said quietly. "I'm calling it what I had left to give after everything I'd already taken." A health scare not long after sent her briefly to the hospital, and when she came home, she stepped back from every remaining objection without a single dramatic word about it, the closest thing to surrender Yejin had ever seen from her. With the danger behind them, Yejin and Ivy were left with something harder than scandal, the slow work of learning each other again. He showed up to a parent-teacher meeting and for once said almost nothing. He just listened. "You used to run every room you walked into," Ivy said afterward. "I'm trying not to run this one." They had one real conversation, finally, sitting on her front steps after the kids were asleep. "I looked for you," he said quietly. "Longer than you'd believe." "I believe it now," she said. "I just don't know what to do with believing it." "You don't have to do anything with it tonight." "I'm still angry," she admitted. "Not at you, at everything we don't get back." "I know," he said. "I am too." "I used to picture this," Ivy said, looking out at the dark street instead of at him. "Some version of you finding us. I never pictured still being this scared even after you found us." "What are you scared of now?" "That I'll let you back in and it'll be easy for a while, and then one day it won't be," she said. "Nobody warns you about that part. Not losing someone, trusting them again after." "I can't promise it'll never be hard," Yejin said. "I can promise I'll still be here when it is." She didn't answer out loud. She just let her shoulder rest against his, and neither of them moved for a long time. A week later, at the twins' school bake sale, Yejin, a man who'd closed billion-dollar deals without blinking, stood covered in flour, utterly defeated by a simple cupcake recipe. "You're doing it wrong," Sara informed him, hands on her hips. "You have to fold it, not stir it like that." "I don't know what folding means." "It means gentle," she said, exasperated like this was obvious. "Like this." She demonstrated with great seriousness, batter on her elbow, and Yejin followed along so badly that she finally gave up and laughed so hard she had to sit down on the kitchen floor. Ivy watched from across the table, arms crossed, trying not to smile and failing. "You realize you're never going to live this down." "I'm aware," Yejin said, flour on his cheek, watching his daughter laugh like it was the only thing he'd ever wanted to see. Ivy laughed too then, easily, for the first time in 6 years, not guarded, not careful, just laughing, the way she used to before any of this began. Nothing was declared that day. Just a small crack of light where a door had been closed for a very long time. 6 months later, Yejin was fully settled into the rhythm of being close, school drop-off and pickup, every single day, without fail, rain or board meetings or otherwise. Saturdays became sacred. A backyard barbecue, smoke curling into the evening air, Mateo arguing over whose turn it was to flip the meat, Sora narrating the entire afternoon to no one in particular, occasionally to the dog. No business calls allowed, not even from the office Yejin still technically ran. Director Choi came sometimes now too, sitting quietly at the edge of it all, watching her grandchildren with an expression no one in the family had ever seen on her before, something between regret and gratitude, never quite landing on either. He spent 10 years building an empire. He spent the next 6 months learning how to simply show up. So here's the question worth sitting with. Does Director Choi deserve forgiveness for protecting them in secret, or for taking 10 years she can never give back? If this story moved you, tell us in the comments, hit like and subscribe for more, and thank you so much for staying until the very end.